Kenneth and Thomas, we had another question with regards to full therapeutic disclosure. Francine was asking about a polygraph. Is that recommendable? Isn't it recommendable? And the whys to that? If you can maybe lead us through that, Kenneth.
Yeah, so I think I'm not. I think I understand that there's lots of organizations that's pro polygraph. And there are quite a few people on the program who has that part of their regular program and process, and I understand the need for it. That could be an option. Um, I mean, if the damage has severely been destroyed, there's only one polygrapher, by the way, that I'll recommend. The issue with the polygraph is that it's not conclusive. It's not 100%. It's not an exact science. You know, so I'm not a fan of it because it places undue pressure. Like we try and work in a way that would get the men to want to disclose the truth and to bring the full truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God, put my hand on the Bible. If you had to force it with a polygraph, then it defeats the purpose. So even if a polygraph is being used, I will try and bring it in as an afterthought, not as the main motivation. So, and I have had polygraphs where, even with this brilliant guy, the guy that we use is, he worked for, he studied in Israel and he worked for I don't know, some army thing in Iraq, and he's like probably the best guy in South Africa. And we've had failures on the polygraph, as well. And the couple that went through that has are phenomenal people. It's Rob. I don't know if you remember Rob, Maria, Rob and Chris. And we've had a failure there, and that was devastating. You know, even more so to Rob than to his wife Chris. The thing said he lied, and he's like, and they're still together and they sorted it out, and he still does polygraphs every 3 months just because of the severity. But it's not, I don't like to bring that sort of force in. It's sort of, if a person's forced to tell the truth, then it's not really, I don't know, I would question the truthfulness of the disclosure. And I haven't had many fails. If a husband sits there and he shares his heart in tatters and he's broken, and he's like apologizing and repentant, you won't get that sort of experience with a polygraph. So Thomas, what's your thoughts on the polygraph with the full disclosure?
I'm also not the biggest fan of it. I think the relationships where you really see do well and flourish is where both people in the relationship work to a point where it's like when you say something, I can believe it. I think that's really the ultimate goal. I think sometimes that does take time. There is some trial and error in that. I I think one of the things has also been mentioned before. You do one test, and then in 3 months later you want to do another one, and 8 months later you want to do another one, and then there's an argument in the relationship, and then you want to do another one, and it becomes very like, I think in my opinion, can be very toxic. I think it then can be weaponized. I think also it's not consistent, like Kenneth was saying. So if there is a false positive, it's like, what do you trust, and what can you trust, what can't you trust? And that just breeds also just a lot of other issues. Um, I think a lot of the times when when your husbands are genuine, like I'm pretty sure we get to a point where we're able to see the difference. Because if someone is honest in this process, you'll see a shift in behavior. You'll see a shift in how they behave with you, how they interact with you, how they, like even little things like when they go to the bathroom, the time limits there in the bathroom. Like if you see someone relapse, there's generally a big shift in behaviors where they're a lot more like shifty-eyed, they're a lot more distance, they go to the bathroom for a lot longer. There's like a whole bunch of signs that are generally you're able to see if there's a problem. And I think I would rather focus on those kinds of things than a polygraph. Like you focus on um yeah, kind of restoring trust and restoring the relationship versus forcing some kind of honesty. I think also the other thing with that is like you get to a point where maybe he stays clean and sober because he's being tested, not because it's genuine, not because he wants to. I think that's also the other issue is, then as soon as you remove the polygraph tests, how much of the change is authentic. I think there's a whole bunch of issues that can come in with that. I personally am just not a big fan. I just think, when you're genuinely able to fix the relationship and rebuild the trust relationship, it's a long-lasting solution. And then you see relationships end up better than they were before. Um, we found out the truth. It's one of those things where I never thought would be possible. Grace Online has completely proved me wrong in that aspect, is that you see an affair come out and you think, well, that relationship, to get it back to where it was before that affair came out must be nearly impossible. And then you see relationships within a couple of months, some people that I've worked with where their relationship was 5 times, 6 times better than what it was before that affair came out, because we actually focus on core issues in the relationship, core issues in the marriage. We start to have a lot more open communication, a lot better communication. And suddenly, like the impossible that we thought couldn't happen, it becomes a frequent reality where these things are happening all the times, where relationships are not just being restored, but are doing even better than they were before. And I think that's the main goal. I don't think doing a polygraph really allows to build a trust relationship.